Can we bear with us? I have control today. I have control. Anybody that know me know I love to have control. So I have control today. Again, I'm excited to be here. I want to welcome all of our guests who are worshiping with us for the first time, second time, third time. We just love having guests here at Peace Chapel. Peace Chapel, can we give the guests a round of applause? This is message 2 in a series that we started last week entitled Back to the Future. And last week we looked at this whole path principle. We started talking about paths, and what we discovered was that paths are not laws that we obey or rules that we keep, but paths are the way that things operate. These are things that work in the background of our lives, things that work in the background of the world. That it's just the way that God established things to operate these paths. How many of you guys are good with directions? Raise your hand if you're good with directions. Let me put my hand down. I'm not that good with directions. I thank God for Google Maps and technology, because it helps me. I can go in a shopping mall. I can park my car, go inside of a shopping mall, and come out and just have the hardest time finding my car. But there are some people that are very, very good with directions. My nephew Chance, I took him to the mall with me, and when we came out, I was lost, completely lost, had no idea where the car was, and he said, I know where it's at. And I didn't really believe him, but since I didn't know where it was at, I said, I might as well follow him, and lo and behold, Chance led us to the car. So, I didn't take a lot of time, but that's good. I mean, some people are really good with directions, some people are not good with directions, some people are like me, we get lost easy. And so what I want to share with you guys to kick today's talk off is the real about being lost, the real about being lost. And so there are a few things that I think everybody that gets lost have in common. You guys might be able to relate to this. You can be lost before you even realize that you're lost. We can be lost long before we realize that we're lost, we can be lost. Second thing is, most people don't get lost on purpose. I think you have to be crazy to get lost on purpose. Most people don't get lost on purpose. Number 3, men really hate to admit when we're lost. I don't know what it is, but for some reason we start driving faster when we get lost, but we absolutely hate to admit when we're lost. And then the last thing is, we always wind up on where the road we're on ends up. Always. We always wind up where the road we're on ends up. And so all of us, we're all going to end up somewhere. Everybody in this room will end up somewhere. Some of us will end up somewhere on purpose, and some of us will end up somewhere on accident. Some of us will arrive at a destination and we'll say, you know what, this is exactly where I intended to be. Come on. And some of us will arrive at a destination and we'll say to ourselves, how in the world did I end up here? How did my life turn out like this? This was not my intention. This was not a part of the original plan. Just like when we're driving, there are predictable destinations in life. In life, there are predictable destinations that when you get on certain paths, it is predictable where you will end up. And so as we continue our conversation today, I want to pick up where we left off. Last week we talked about this path principle. It's called the principle of the path. And the path principle is this: direction determines destination. Direction determines destination. Now, this is true geographically, but it's also true financially. It's also true professionally. It's also true relationally. It's also true morally. It's true spiritually. It's true emotionally, that where we take off, the direction that we go, determines where we end up. Now, if I was to ask everyone in this room, where do you intend to be relationally in 5 years? What do you intend to be financially in 5 years? Most of you would have an idea. You would have an answer. This is where I intend to be in 5 years. When I was a kid, I intended to be, besides intending to be Batman when I grow up, I also intended to be a detective. When I was a kid, I wanted to be a detective, and many of you had intentions when you were younger. When I grow up, this is what I want to be. This is who I want to be. This is where I want to become. We had intentions in our minds in terms of our relationships, that I want to be married. I want to have X amount of kids. But here's the challenge, and here's something that all of us can relate to. There's often a disconnect between our intentions and our direction.
Yeah, be thinking about that.
Are you guys with me? I want you guys to stay with me. The challenge for most of us in this room, if not all of us, is that there is often a disconnect from where we intend to go and where we actually go. But remember, direction determines destination. And so here's the thing: your Heavenly Father, and I believe that most of you, do not want you to be victims of this disconnect. Nobody wants to be victims of this disconnect, that I intend to go here, but I end up there. But the thing is, direction trumps intention every single time. Now, I'll give you guys a true story. A couple of weeks ago, we left to take Maya to college. Before we left, we had the date already planned out. We knew the day we were going to leave. We even had an idea of the time. We knew the direction. And before we left, guess what? We even prayed about it. To get to GCU, you got to jump on the 10 freeway and you have to go east. And if you stay east on the 10 freeway, eventually you will arrive in Arizona. Now, it doesn't matter how much we planned, how much we prayed, and what we intended to do. If we would have jumped on that freeway and went 10 west, we would have never ended up at GCU. Right. Now, what's obvious to us when it comes to directions is not so obvious to us when it comes to life and when it comes to living. But just like there are predictable destinations when it comes to driving, there are predictable destinations when it comes to living. The young lady says, when I grow up, I want to marry a strong Christian man who is responsible, who is caring, who is loving. But in the meantime, I'll just go out with whoever asks me as long as he's cute. Or the dad says, look, I want to have a good relationship with my son. I want us to be connected. I want to have a really good relationship with my son. But in the meantime, I'm going to neglect spending time with him. Or someone might say, you know what, I want to be healthy. I want to spend really good quality time with my grandchildren as they're growing up. But in the meantime, I'll overeat, I'll eat bad, and I'll neglect to exercise. Or someone might say, you know what, the wife, or the girlfriend, she might say, I want to have a really close, intimate relationship with my husband, but in the meantime, I'm going to put everything and anything ahead of him. Or I want to raise my children in church because I know what it's like to be raised in the church, but in the meantime, I'm going to put everything ahead of that. I'll get to that. I'll get to that one day. And so we discover that there's a disconnect between our intentions, this is what I intend to do, and our actual direction, this is where I am going. And so how does this happen? How does this happen? How do we have these great intentions on being someone, on being this person, on accomplishing this financially, on saving money, on being healthy, on marrying this type of person? How does this happen where there's a disconnect between where we intend to go and where we end up going? What usually happens is something captures our attention. That's usually what happens when there is a change of direction, or if we're going, or we intend to go in a certain direction, we actually start moving in that direction, but then for whatever reason we stop going in that direction. What usually happens is something captures our attention. When I was 17 years old, driving down 75th Street between Figueroa and Hoover, I saw this dark-skinned woman with long hair, and she wore glasses, and I'm talking about, she caught my attention because I've always been into dark-skinned women. At the time, I was going to Long Beach City College. I had my own little business going on the side. But this beautiful dark-skinned woman, she captured my attention. And now some 20-something years later, 2 children, 2 lives, two people are here today because this beautiful dark-skinned woman captured my attention. All right. You see how that works, right? You're going in a certain direction. Something captures your attention. And when she captured my attention, she had my attention. She took me to school. We took walks together. We talked together. She dominated my mind, Eve. She had my attention. Because she had my attention, she influenced my direction. Are you guys with me?
Okay, come on. Say that.
Now, either things can capture our attention, or we can give attention to things. But either way it goes, whether it captures our attention or we give attention to it, it always influences our direction. Now, in about 900 BC, I want you to wrap your mind around that. 900 BC, this is 900 years before Christ. Solomon, the third king of Israel, left us this awesome literature that we call the Proverbs. And in the book of Proverbs, we're going to look at chapter 7. In the book of Proverbs, Solomon talks about this disconnect that can take place between where we intend to go and where we actually end up. Now, in the book of Proverbs, Proverbs chapter 7, There are three characters that I want you guys to pay attention to. We have the narrator, which is Solomon. Then we have the naive young man, and we have the seductive married woman. Now, let me pause for a moment. Solomon's point is not that all women are seductive. Amen. This is important that you guys get this. That's not the point of the parable. And his point is not that all men are naive, although we do tend to be a little naive. Solomon's point in the parable is this: that what appears to us to be pastime can actually be a pathway that leads to an unintended destination. Are you guys with me? What appears to us to be a pastime, Netflix and chill, right? It appears to be a pastime. Solomon warns that what we think might be a pastime is actually a pathway that's actually taking us somewhere. And so here's the story. Here's how Solomon rolls out the story. In Proverbs chapter 7, starting at verse 6, Solomon says, "At the window of my house," so he's up high. That means that he has perspective. He says, "I looked down the latest. I saw among the simple, I noticed among the youths, a young man lacking judgment." Now, there are only two ways that we can get judgment: time and experience. This young man has no time because he's young and he lacks experience. Solomon continues. He was going down the street near her corner. This is direction, right? He was going down the street near her corner, walking along in the direction, there's our word, walking along in the direction of her house. Amen. At twilight. So mind you, Solomon, this is the image is this. Solomon is telling this parable to a group of young men. It's a parable. And he goes on to say, as the day was fading, as the dark of the night set in. And so if this was a movie, there would be two separate soundtracks, right? There would be two separate soundtracks. The narrator has a soundtrack and the young man has a soundtrack, right? The young man, the soundtrack and the music playing in the young man's mind is something like this. That's what he hears, right? He hears that. That's the soundtrack that's playing in his mind. But it's a different soundtrack. He doesn't have the same soundtrack that the narrator has. Here's the soundtrack that's playing in the narrator's mind. Yeah, y'all know that sound, right? The narrator knows. He's watching this thing, right? Remember, he's watching it from his window. He has perspective. And Solomon, the narrator, he understands that intentions don't determine destination, but that direction is what determines destination. And so the story continues. All right. Then out came a woman to meet him, dressed like a prostitute with crafty intent. So y'all should read your Bibles. This is in the Bible. Look at this. She is unruly and defiant. He's using her hyperbole to make his point. Her feet never stay at home. Now in the street, now in the squares, at every corner, she lurks. This is in the Bible. This is some good, spicy stuff. Look at this. She took hold of him and kissed him, and with a brazen face, she said, now this is a little R-rated. This is a little R-rated. With a brazen face, she said, today I have filled my vows, and I have food from my fellowship offering at home. Ooh. What in the world does that mean? She was a Jewish woman, and this was her religious practice, right? These were her religious customs. So we can liken that to a woman who goes to church on a regular basis, and the mindset is this: I went to church, I emptied my sin bucket, and now I'm ready to take you down. That's where she's coming from. She's a good church girl. She goes to church every single Sunday, but she got some crafty, ill intent. She getting ready to take this young man down. So I came out to meet you. Y'all see that? Look for you and have found you. And at this point, he has to be thinking, man, I'm so special. I have to be one in a million. At this point, he's thinking, look, here's what he's thinking. I'm the one. She came out to meet me. I am the one. That's what's going on in the young man's mind. But here's what's going on in Solomon's mind. You're not the one, you're just another one.
Break it down.
You're not the one. You're just another one. The story continues. Look, I have covered my bed with colored linens from Egypt. I have perfumed my bed with myrrh, aloes, and cinnamon. Now, during these times, in this culture, everything smelled really, really bad. There was a foul odor all around. I mean, you just leave out your house and things smell really bad, and people smell bad, right? Because only the wealthy people had access to hygiene that would keep you smelling good. And apparently this woman is wealthy, which is what we'll see a little bit later. And what she's saying to the young man is, I will be like a breath of fresh air to you. Come on over to my place. I have it all set. It's going to smell real, real good. And so she's crafty, and she has ill intent. Come, let us drink deeply of love till morning. Let's enjoy ourselves with love. She has it all planned out. Then she reads his mind. Look at this. My husband is not at home. She knew what he was thinking. Where's your husband at? What is he going to think about me being over there doing what we getting ready to do? Where's your husband at? He says, my husband is not at home. He has gone on a long journey, which means that we have time. We can make this thing do what it does. Look at this. Now this is where it gets strange. He has taken his purse. And when I read that, I started wondering, is that why she's out looking for somebody else? Because her husband has a purse? But then I started looking at it in other translations. And so we're going to look at this thing in the New American Standard. It says, my husband is not at home. He has gone on a long journey, and he has taken a bag of money with him. They're wealthy. Her husband is a businessman, and he's out taking care of business. In the meantime, she's on the hunt. She's out lurking and she's found this young man. She's captured his attention. The story continues. Look at this. He has taken a bag of money with him and will not be back till full moon. We have plenty of time with persuasive words. Look, she led him. With persuasive words, she led him. Intention, direction. Intention, direction. Intention, Netflix and chill. But that's not the direction as we're getting ready to see. She led him astray. She seduced him with her smooth talk. It's premeditated. She had a game plan. She knew what she was doing. Look at this. All at once. All at once. All at once. He followed her. All at once. He followed her. And he's thinking in his mind, man, I'm the guy, straight past the line, past all of the bouncers, to the best seat in the house. I am the man. I mean, this is life. It can't get any better than this. Solomon says, like an ox. Going to slaughter. What do you mean like an ox? Going to slaughter all at once. All at once. You're just such a drama queen, Solomon. What do you mean? He's not finished. Like a deer. Stepping into a noose till an arrow pierces his liver. But Solomon is not done. All at once, he followed her. Did you see that car that was parked in her driveway? That was a Bentley. I'm getting ready to have a good time. I can't wait to tell my boys about this. I took her down. Everybody been looking to take her down. All at once. Like a bird darting into a snare. Little knowing it will cost him his life. Pass. Pass. It's not the intention, it's the actual direction that you go in. Now Solomon, at this point, he pulls out of the parable and he begins to address the young men in his audience. And he says, now then, my sons, now then, he says, listen to me. Pay attention to what I say. Listen to me. Pay attention. Do not let your heart turn to her ways. You guys see that? Or stray into her paths. What do you mean ways? What do you mean paths? I'm just out to have a good time. This is no ways. This is no paths. Come on. Look at this. Many are the victims she has brought down. Many. You're not as unique as you think you are. Her slain are a mighty throne. Solomon, he's talking to these young men who are there, and he's trying to give them wisdom, and he says, many, she has brought down many through her seductive ways. You guys know why counselors are so valuable these days? I mean, I have nothing against counselors. I think counselors are good. But here's why counselors are so valuable these days. Because we are so predictable. See, we think that we're one in a million, but we're actually one of a million. You're unique. You're unique. We're all unique. But the path that you're on is not unique. And that's why people have been trying to warn you. It's not as innocent as you think. You told me that when you grow up, this is what you want to be. You told me that when you get married, this is the kind of man that you wanted to marry. You told me that you wanted to have a body like this. You told me that you wanted to be healthy. And all I'm saying is good intentions. The woman who's all alone with 4 kids and 4 baby daddies. She had good intentions. That was not a part of the plan. But there was a disconnect between her intentions and her direction. And I'm telling you, when there is a disconnect, direction will trump intentions every single time. It's not your intentions that will determine your destination. It's the direction that you go in. He goes on to say, her house, stay with me, her house is a highway. The young man is like, what do you mean highway? Her house is not a highway. Her house is a house. Do you mean it's on a highway? No, her house is a highway. How can her house be a highway? It's a house. No, it's a highway because it's taking you somewhere. Everything associated with her house is taking you somewhere. And some of you guys are on a highway that has nothing to do with sex. I don't want you guys to think that this is all about sex. Some of you guys are on a highway that has nothing to do with sex, that's taking you somewhere. He says her house is a highway leading to the grave. Leading down to the chambers of death. Now, let me go back to this whole sexual thing. Because we think it's innocent. And I'm going to tell you based on experience, it's not innocent. Because here's what happens, whether you believe it or not, right? Remember, principles work in the background of our lives, whether we believe in them or not. Here's the thing about principles. They're sticky. They follow you around. Wherever you go, you cannot shake a principle. And here's what I want you guys to wrap your minds around this. This is true whether you believe it or not. When you lay down with a person, everything that's associated with that person now attaches itself to you.
Come on, go say that.
See, we're worried about sexually transmitted diseases. But there's something worse than that. Sexually transmitted demons.
Hey, come on, Pastor.
Amen.
Sexually transmitted emotions. And you're wondering why you're just crying for no reason. You wonder why you just keep losing your cool. You're not connecting the dots. Wise people are able to connect the dots. Wise people understand something that fools don't understand. Wise people understand this, that all of life is connected. There are no isolated events. What I do in the present will show up in my future. When you lay down with a person, when you align yourself up with a person, everything that's on that person now attaches itself to you. But it's worse than that. Everything that was on everybody that person slept with has now attached itself to you. It's not so innocent. Her house is not just on a highway. Her house is a highway. And it's leading you somewhere. And the reason why you can't get your money together is because your life is not together. And the reason why your life is not together is because of the people that you've aligned yourself with. They've attached themselves to you, and they're sucking you dry. Her house is a highway. It's leading down to the chambers of death. I'm not trying to ruin nobody's fun. That's not my intention. I'm telling you, I'm not trying to ruin nobody's fun. But I want you to understand this. It's important. Pastime can end up being a pathway that leads you to an unintended destination. And it doesn't matter how much you pray about it. It doesn't matter how much you come to church. That's why people, see, a lot of times people, they say, oh, Christianity doesn't work, because I know people that go to church and they live like this outside of the church. It's not that Christianity doesn't work, it's that they don't work. Right? They're doing things contrary to what people like Solomon said in the Bible. They're doing things contrary to what Jesus said in the Bible. And so you can't do things contrary to what a person says and then blame them for the outcome. It's not about, look, I'm all for praying. But we got to get practical with this thing. We got to start putting this stuff into practice. That's what Jesus said. That's what he said last week, right? He said, the person who hears these words of mine and puts them into practice is like a wise man or a wise woman who built his or her house on a rock. Right. When the storm came, it didn't knock the house down because it had its foundation on the rock. The fool is the one who hears the words. They come to church, they hear, and they're like, ooh, ooh, ooh. And then sometimes what they'll do is they'll try to ignore that part. They'll try to tune that part out. Right? That's when they start talking to other people, writing notes, not paying attention. The fool hears these words of mine and does not put them into practice. It's almost better, look, not almost, it is better. It's better to not hear than to hear and don't put it into practice. The fool hears these words of mine and does not put them into practice. Look, I'm not innocent of this. I say I want to be healthy. I say I want to have a nice body. I say I want to be around to enjoy life with my grandkids. Those are my intentions. But every time I eat quesadillas with extra cheese, that's taking me in a direction. Are you guys with me? Yes. Every time I decide not to go to the gym because I don't feel like it, it's taking me in a direction. So it doesn't matter that I get on my knees and I cry out, Lord, please help me to have a nice body. Please take away the diabetes. Please take away the high blood pressure. It doesn't matter that I plead with God. If I don't go in the direction, it's never going to happen. So don't make a mess of your life. Don't make a mess of your life and then turn around and blame God. You're on a pathway. Your pastime is a pathway. It's taking you somewhere. You can't just, even in your leisure time, you have to understand that that's a pathway. You can't keep treating her like that. You can't keep treating him like that. That's a pathway. You can't keep ignoring that. That's a pathway. It's taking you somewhere. And again, I'm not trying to take away your fun. Here's what I want you to look. This is what I want you to think about. And I'm almost done, I promise you. This is what I want you to think about. I want you to think about all the fun that you've ever had. All the fun you've ever had in life. All the fun. Then I want you to think about all the money you've wasted that's connected with that fun. And then throw into that box the regrets that you have that's associated with that fun. And then I want you to transition. And I want you to think about a time when you went beyond your comfort zone to help somebody that was in need. It stretched you. You really couldn't do it in your mind, but you did it anyway. And I want you to think about which one do you want more in your life? The feeling that came from the fun, all the money that was wasted, and all of the regrets, or the feeling that was associated with you going beyond yourself and actually helping someone. Here's the thing. Fun is always in the rearview mirror. Are you guys with me? The service, true authentic service is a traveling companion. Are you guys with me? Yep. I'm not trying to take away your fun. Maybe some of it. But not all of it. You are unique. I'll give you that. But the path you're on is not unique. It's very, very predictable. Satisfaction, that's what we want, satisfaction. Satisfaction, this is what I want to leave you guys with. Satisfaction is the result of arriving where you intended to be. That's why I asked you. I want to pray for you. I want everybody to stand up.